The Galactic Federation had long considered Earth nothing more than a footnote in the vast expanse of the universe, a chaotic planet teetering on the brink of self-destruction. With its primitive technology and volatile nature, it was nothing but a risk to the balance of power across the galaxy. Those who ruled the stars saw humanity as an unpredictable element in an otherwise harmonious and orderly galaxy. Earth was a failed experiment in their eyes, and for centuries, the Federation had silently debated whether to eliminate the threat it posed or allow it to remain a nuisance. But now the time had come. The Federation's highest council convened in Grand Chamber, where representatives from the most powerful and advanced civilizations gathered, their eyes cold and calculating as they viewed Earth from the giant windows of their command station. It was a decision long overdue. An entire species deemed too dangerous to thrive left unchecked beneath their gaze. Earth had become a ticking time bomb, and the Federation's patience had run out. From every corner of the galaxy, emissaries from the ancient races of the galaxy voiced their support for Earth's destruction. Even those who had once considered the planet's potential now called for its removal. It was too unstable, they argued, its population too disjointed, too fragmented to ever unite and create anything of worth to the Federation. Earth's wars among themselves were evidence enough that they were incapable of peace. They saw humanity as a failed species destined to self-destruct eventually, so why wait for it to tear itself apart when they could extinguish the problem once and for all? The decision was swift, the vote unanimous. The Federation would send a fleet of warships to Earth and wipe it from existence. Their weapons would leave nothing but ashes behind, their ships equipped with technologies light years ahead of anything humanity could conceive. Their goal was clear, and their resolve unshakable. As the order was given, the fleet began its journey across the stars toward Earth with no hesitation and no mercy in their hearts. Meanwhile, on Earth, life continued in its own chaotic rhythm. Unaware of the approaching storm, a young Earth pilot named Captain Jax Vega was preparing for a routine training mission. His ship, an old but reliable fighter craft, was being prepped for takeoff when a strange signal began to pulse across the ship's communication systems. At first, he thought it was just a glitch, but the signal grew stronger, more insistent, as though calling out to him specifically. He couldn't explain it, but something deep within him urged him to follow it. The signal led him to an abandoned region of Earth's surface, a place that had once been a thriving city long before humanity's rise to power. Now, it was a forgotten wasteland buried beneath layers of dust and ruin. Intrigued, Jax ventured deeper into the site, his boots crunching against the broken pavement of a lost era. But as he explored, a hidden chamber revealed itself beneath the earth, an ancient structure unknown to all, but now uncovered by fate. Within the chamber was a relic unlike anything he had ever seen. Its metal surface shimmered with an energy that seemed to hum with life, and in that moment, Jax felt something stir deep within him, an ancient force that pulsed in time with his heartbeat. He didn't understand it, but he knew one thing for sure: this artifact was the key to something far greater than anything humanity had ever encountered. It was as if the artifact had been waiting for him all along. Little did he know the discovery of this relic would alter the course of history forever. The Galactic Federation's fleet was already en route and Earth's fate was sealed, but the pilot's actions would spark the beginning of an unexpected chain of events, one that would challenge the Federation's belief that humanity was nothing more than a fragile species on the brink of extinction. As Captain Jax Vega stood before the artifact, his hand hovering over its surface, he felt the weight of something ancient and powerful pulse through the air. It wasn't just a relic, it was alive, somehow aware of his presence, as though it had been waiting for him all along. His mind raced with questions, but none of them made sense. The hum of the artifact was not a sound he could hear, but something he could feel deep within his chest, almost like a heartbeat of its own. His instincts told him to take it to someone who might understand, but his curiosity overpowered his caution. He reached out and touched the object. The moment his fingers made contact, a surge of energy shot through him, his body trembling with the force of it. The room seemed to shake around him, as if the walls themselves were reacting to the artifact's awakening. The hum grew louder, and a strange vision flashed in his mind, an image of distant stars, planets. he had never seen before flashing in rapid succession, as if the artifact was showing him glimpses of another time or another place, an ancient civilization far beyond the reach of Earth's understanding. His heart raced with adrenaline and fear, yet he could not pull his hand away. Something inside him told him that the knowledge he was receiving was far more important than anything he could comprehend at that moment. Just as quickly as it began, the vision ceased, leaving him breathless and disoriented, but the artifact remained still and silent. The hum had faded into nothingness, and all that remained was a strange sense of clarity that had not been there before. Jack staggered back away from the artifact and took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. It took him several moments to focus his thoughts, and when he did, he knew with absolute certainty that the artifact was not from any civilization Earth had ever encountered. It was something far older, something far more advanced than even the Galactic Federation could comprehend. He carefully inspected the artifact again, noticing faint engravings along its surface markings that looked almost like a language, but one that he did not recognize. He knew he needed help, but at that moment he didn't have time to waste. The Federation's fleet was already on its way, and Earth had only hours before they arrived. He had to get back to his ship and report his discovery to the right people, but something told him that no one would believe him without seeing the artifact for themselves, and the weight of its power weighed heavily on him as he made his way back to the surface. The journey back to his fighter was long and filled with uncertainty, but the quiet of the ruined city seemed to press in on him. With every step, the reality of the situation was settling in. Earth was on the verge of annihilation, and he had just uncovered a piece of technology that might hold the key to saving it, but he didn't know how to use it or even where to begin. His mind raced with possibilities, but all he could do was return to base and inform the higher-ups of what he had found. As he approached his fighter, he keyed in the communication code to his superiors and relayed the details of his discovery. He could hear the disbelief in their voices as they tried to understand what he was saying, but there was no time for hesitation. The fleet was almost within range, and Earth's defenses were no match for the coming storm. Jax knew that the artifact had to be the answer, but he had no idea how or why it had chosen him to find it. He only knew that it was his responsibility now to protect Earth and its future, even if it meant confronting powers far greater than anything humanity had ever known. And so, with the weight of humanity's survival on his shoulders, Jax Vega prepared to make his next move, unsure of what would come next, but determined to use the artifact's power, no matter the cost. Captain Jax Vega's fighter shot through the skies, heading toward the nearest military base, the artifact securely stowed in the cockpit beside him. His heart raced with urgency. The Federation's fleet was closed, and Earth had no real defenses to speak of. Its military was outdated and underfunded. The only hope lay in the power of the relic he had uncovered. But how could he possibly convince anyone of its importance when even he barely understood its capabilities? As the base came into view, he knew he had to act fast. There was no time to waste. Inside the command center, the air was thick with tension as military leaders and scientists scrambled to assess the alien fleet's trajectory. The general in charge, a stern-faced woman named General Lara Trent, barely glanced up as Jax entered the room, his presence barely registering in the chaos around him. She was focused on the holographic map, displaying the fleet's approach, calculating the chances of survival based on Earth's current defenses. The numbers didn't look good, but Jax had no time for formalities. He stormed up to her desk, drawing her attention as he slammed his hand down on the surface. "General, we've got a serious problem, but I found something that might turn the tide," he said, his voice urgent, his pulse still pounding from the discovery. "You need to see this." Trent raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical, but she saw the urgency in his eyes and nodded for him to continue. "What is it, Vega?" she asked. "We don't have time for wild theories." Jax didn't wait for her to finish speaking. He pulled the artifact from his bag and placed it carefully on the table, its surface now glowing faintly in the dim light of the command center. The room fell silent as all eyes turned toward the object, its presence seeming to draw the very air from the room. "What is this?" Trent asked, her voice sharp as she stood up to inspect it. "I don't know exactly," Jax replied, But it's not from Earth. I found it buried beneath the ruins of an ancient city. It has energy readings unlike anything we've ever encountered." Trent frowned as she studied the artifact, her fingers brushing lightly against its surface. She could feel a strange warmth radiating from it. "But nothing more, Vega. You expect me to believe this is our answer against an alien fleet that's already almost here," she said incredulously. "This thing looks like nothing more than some ancient relic." Jax met her gaze, and for a moment she could see the intensity in his eyes, the conviction that drove him. "It's not just some relic, General, it's something more. It's alive somehow," he said. "I don't understand how, but when I touched it something happened. I saw things no human should know. It's showing us the way to fight back." For a moment, the room was quiet as everyone took in his words. The idea of such power being contained in an artifact was almost too much to process. But then a senior scientist named Dr. Eli Hawk, who had been silently observing the artifact, stepped forward, his face pale but filled with wonder. "I've seen energy signatures like this before," he muttered under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. It's not human technology, but it's not alien either. It's something else entirely." Jax's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Dr. Hawk continued, "this artifact could be the key to unlocking something far greater than just a weapon. It could be the source of an energy we've never imagined, an energy that could potentially level the playing field against the Federation's fleet." Trent's gaze shifted from the artifact back to Jax. She was clearly torn between disbelief and the tiny seed of hope growing within her. "How do you know this, Vega? How can we trust that this thing will do anything at all?" Jax took a deep breath, his mind spinning with the implications of everything he had learned since discovering the artifact. "I don't know how or why it chose me, but I know that it has power beyond our understanding. And if we don't use it, Earth will fall before the Federation ever gets the chance to finish what they started." There was a long pause in the room as everyone processed what Jax had said. Then General Trent finally spoke, her voice quieter now, but no less resolute. "All right, Vega, you've convinced me. We're out of time. I'll give you one shot to prove this artifact can work. But you better be right, or Earth won't have a future." Jax nodded determinedly. "I'll do whatever it takes," he said. "I'll make it work." The room erupted into action as the first steps were taken to study the artifact's potential. But in Jax's heart, he knew that time was running out, and every moment they spent trying to understand it brought them closer to the edge of oblivion. The Federation would soon be upon them, and only the power of the artifact could save them now. As the command center buzzed with activity, Jax Vega stood at the center of it all, his mind focused solely on the artifact beside him on the table. He had barely slept in the last 48 hours, the weight of the situation pressing down on him harder than ever before. The Federation's fleet was mere hours away from Earth, and still they hadn't unlocked the full potential of the artifact. They had no idea what it could truly do or how to activate it. All they had were fragments of ancient energy signatures that barely made sense to their technology. Dr. Eli Hawk and a team of engineers and scientists worked tirelessly around the artifact, their faces illuminated by the flickering holograms of data and schematics they'd been able to pull together. The object was like nothing they had ever seen before. Its structure and material baffled them, and no amount of analysis had revealed a clear method to activate it. But as the hours passed, Jax's anxiety began to grow. He couldn't afford to wait any longer. Earth's survival depended on this, and he knew that he couldn't leave it in their hands alone. They needed him to help unlock its power. At some point during the night, Jax found himself alone in the room with the artifact, his eyes never leaving its strange glowing surface. The hum that had once filled the air had faded to a distant whisper, but he could still feel its presence pressing against his skin like a heartbeat of something far older than any of them. It was as if the artifact was waiting for him to make the next move. And suddenly he had an idea. Something inside him urged him to try something different. He stepped forward and placed his hand on the artifact again. This time, not hesitating, he focused on the energy he had felt when he first made contact with it, the surge of power that had shaken him to his core. He closed his eyes and tried to clear his mind, channeling his thoughts into one singular intent: to understand the artifact, to awaken whatever hidden power it contained. For a moment, Nothing happened, the room was still silent, and Jax felt a sense of growing dread that maybe he was wrong, that the artifact was just a relic of some ancient species with no real power to offer humanity. But then it happened. The energy surged again, this time even stronger than before. It was as if the artifact recognized him as its rightful connection, its chosen one, and the hum returned louder this time, vibrating through the very walls of the command center. The entire room seemed to tremble with the force of it, and Jax could feel his body tingling with the raw power coursing through his veins. In that moment, the artifact seemed to open up, revealing hidden layers beneath its surface. A network of glowing symbols and energy pathways appeared in the air around him, a language he could not understand, but somehow instinctively knew how to interpret. The symbols seemed to shift and move in ways that defied logic, as if they were alive and responding to his thoughts. Jax didn't know how he was doing it, but he knew one thing for sure: he was connected to the artifact in a way that no one else was, and as the energy swirled around him, he felt a rush of knowledge flood his mind. Ancient secrets long forgotten were now at his fingertips. Everything he needed to know to wield the power of the artifact was there, and for the first time, he felt hope stirring within him. He opened his eyes and looked around at the scientists and engineers who had stopped what they were doing and were now watching him in awe. They saw the change in him, the way the artifact glowed more brightly than before, the way the energy filled the room with an otherworldly force. Jax's voice was steady and sure as he spoke to them. "I know how to use it," he said, his eyes locked onto General Trent's, who stood at the back of the room. "It's not a weapon, it's a conduit for something greater, something that will allow us to fight back against the Federation, but we need to act fast." Trent stepped forward, her eyes narrowing with determination. "How long will it take?" she asked, her voice firm with urgency. "We don't have much time," Jax replied, "but if we can harness the power of this artifact, I can create a weapon capable of taking down their fleet. We'll have a fighting chance." The room erupted into action as Jax outlined his plan to the engineers and scientists, the urgency palpable in every word. They had only moments before the Federation arrived, but now there was a flicker of hope as they began to prepare the systems necessary to channel the artifact's power into a weapon that could turn the tide of the war against Earth's enemies. Jax felt the pressure mounting with every passing second, but for the first time since discovering the artifact, he truly believed they might have a chance to survive. The command center hummed with frenzied activity as Jax Vega and the team of scientists scrambled to implement the plan he had outlined. The pressure in the air was thick with urgency. The Federation's fleet was now less than an hour away, and Earth's defenses were still woefully inadequate. Jax knew that even with the artifact's power, it was no guarantee, but it was their only hope, and the clock was ticking. Jax stood at the center of the room watching as the engineers worked tirelessly to configure the artifact's energy into a weapon that could be used against the Federation's fleet. They were making adjustments to the ship's weapon systems, running diagnostics, and recalibrating every possible parameter to ensure the power of the artifact could be harnessed without catastrophic failure. He could see the fear in their eyes. They knew this was a long shot, but they were all in it together now. As the seconds ticked by, Jax felt his own anxiety mounting, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. But he couldn't afford to show any sign of doubt. Not now, not when humanity's future was on the line. He paced back and forth as the countdown to the Federation's arrival grew shorter. The energy from the artifact continued to pulse quietly in the background, like a living thing, its power saturating the room and filling him with a strange sense of purpose. "How much longer?" Jax asked Dart Eli Hawk, who was overseeing the final adjustments. "We're almost there," Hawk said, his voice strained but determined. "The systems are stabilizing. We've had to make some compromises, but it should be enough to create a temporary pulse. We'll need to be close to the enemy fleet to maximize the effect." Close. Jax repeated the word in his mind. The implications of it were clear. If they were too close, they risked destroying their own ships or worse. But there was no other option. They had to hit the fleet hard and fast before they could regroup. A comms officer suddenly shouted from the back of the room, "Federation fleet detected. They've entered the system. They're approaching the outer orbit now." Jax felt his stomach drop. The time had come and Earth had no more time to prepare. The fleet was almost here, and they had no defense except the weapon they were building around the artifact. "We've got one shot at this," General Trent said as she stepped forward, her expression hard and focused. "Jax, get to your fighter. We're launching all ships now." Jax nodded without hesitation. He turned and made his way to the hangar where his fighter was already prepped and waiting. The engines were roaring as the team worked quickly to finish calibrating the weapon systems. Jax climbed into the cockpit, strapping himself in. As he accessed the ship's controls, his fingers flying over the keys as he inputted the final parameters for the weapon to channel the artifact's energy. His mind raced as he connected the ship's systems to the artifact. His senses heightened as the energy from the relics surged through the ship. He could feel the ship itself vibrating with the power coursing through it. The artifact was not only fueling the weapon systems, it was sensing with him, as if it were a part of him, its energy mingling with his thoughts, its power amplifying his every movement. The comms came alive again. "All ships are cleared for launch." The voice crackled. "Weapons are ready, Captain Vega." "Good," Jax replied, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at the edges of his mind. "Let's make this count." As the hangar doors opened and his fighter was released into the cold expanse of space, Jax's pulse quickened. The Federation fleet was visible now, massive ships with gleaming hulls and powerful weapons floating just outside Earth's orbit. The dark silhouettes of warships filled the sky. The alien armada was coming, and Earth's fate hung in the balance. Jax's fighter shot forward into the fray. His fingers gripped the controls as he engaged the artifact-powered weapon system. The pulse from the relics surged into the ship's energy core, and the ship itself seemed to hum with power. The entire vessel now an extension of the artifact. As Jax directed it toward the approaching fleet, he knew there was no turning back now. This was their last stand, and it was up to him to lead the charge. The vastness of space stretched before Captain Jax Vega. As he maneuvered his fighter toward the incoming Federation fleet, his heart raced with anticipation and fear. The weight of humanity's survival pressed heavily on him, but the artifact's energy flowing through the ship gave him a sense of purpose he had never known before. His fighter now felt like an extension of his own body, the power of the artifact coursing through him as if it were guiding his every move. The Federation fleet loomed closer, their massive warships gleaming like cold predators in the dark expanse of space, their weapons primed and ready to strike. Jax's fighter was one of the few Earth ships in the vicinity. The rest of the fleet was still preparing for launch, or far too outmatched by the superior technology of the Federation. Their only hope lay in the weapon they had built around the artifact, and Jax was the one who would have to make it work. "All ships on high alert." The voice of General Trent crackled through his comms. "Vega, you have the green light. We're counting on you." Jax's grip tightened on the controls, his fingers brushing against the activation button for the weapon system. His mind was focused entirely on the enemy fleet ahead. He had only one shot at this. He had to strike first and make it count. As the Federation fleet drew nearer, Jax could see the vast array of warships floating in tight formation, each one a towering behemoth, bristling with weaponry. The sheer scale of their firepower was enough to make any human doubt their ability to survive, but Jax knew that they had something the Federation didn't understand. They had the artifact. He activated the weapon system, and immediately the energy from the artifact surged through his ship. The once cold metal of the fighter vibrated with the intensity of the power now coursing through it. His ship became a beacon of energy in the cold void of space, and the air around him seemed to shimmer with the power of the relic. Jax locked onto the nearest warship, the targeting system whirring to life. As the weapon calibrated its focus, the pulse of energy from the artifact intensified, its hum now filling his mind. With an overwhelming sense of purpose, he aimed carefully and then, in one fluid motion, pressed the button. A brilliant beam of energy shot forward from his ship, the pulse of power slamming into the Federation warship. With devastating force, the enemy ship seemed to flicker for a moment as the beam tore through its hull, and then it exploded in a burst of light and debris, sending shockwaves through space. Jax's heart pounded as the first victory of the battle was achieved, but there was no time to savor it. The Federation fleet had already retaliated, their weapons charging up for counterattack. Shields are holding, but they're coming in fast, one of the Earth Fleet officers reported. Jax didn't have time to check on the status of the other ships. He was already locking onto the next target, another massive warship bearing down on him. He could feel the energy of the artifact pulsing in rhythm with his own heartbeat this time. He didn't wait, he fired again, the beam of energy tearing through the cold vacuum of space with terrifying precision, slamming into the enemy vessel and obliterating it in a flash of light. The battlefield erupted into chaos as the Earth fleet engaged the Federation warships. Earth's ships were outnumbered and outgunned, but the power of the artifact had leveled the playing field, and Jax was at the heart of it all, this fighter darting in and out of enemy fire like a predator hunting its prey. "Keep pushing forward." General Trent's voice rang through his comms. "We've got them on the ropes, Vega." Jax didn't respond. His focus was entirely on the battle before him, the artifact's power flowing through him like a surge of raw energy. He felt unstoppable as he took down warship after warship. The Federation's arrogance had led them to underestimate humanity, and now they were paying the price. But the battle was far from over as more Federation ships emerged from the shadows and moved to surround the Earth fleet. Jax knew they needed more time, more power, if they were going to win. "General, we need more energy," Jax said, his voice strained from the intensity of the battle. "I can't hold them off with just one fighter. We need to activate the full potential of the artifact." The silence on the other end of the comms was deafening, but then Trent's voice cut through the tension. "Do it, Vega, do whatever it takes to win." With that, Jax made his decision. He would push the artifact to its limits, and if they failed, it would all be on him. But he couldn't let Earth fall, not now, not after everything they had fought for. Jax felt the weight of the decision settle deep within him as the chaotic battlefield raged on. The Federation fleet was relentless, their firepower overwhelming. But with every Federation ship that fell, the artifact's power seemed to grow stronger. It was as though the relic was feeding off the conflict around them, amplifying the energy he could harness. But he knew it wasn't enough. If they were to stand any chance of victory, he had to push further. With determination coursing through his veins, Jax pulled his fighter into a sharp turn, avoiding a barrage of enemy fire. As he maneuvered to the next target, the artifact's hum in the background felt almost like a heartbeat in sync with his own, but now it was pulsing faster and stronger, urging him to take greater risks. The power it offered was like nothing he had ever experienced, but something in the back of his mind told him he was only scratching the surface of its true potential. His eyes flicked to the displays in front of him, showing more Federation ships advancing on his position. He could see the tactical readouts, the enemy's numbers growing by the second. Earth's fleet was beginning to buckle under the pressure. They were outmatched, but not outdone. "Vega, you need to fall back. We can't afford to lose you." General Trent's voice crackled urgently through his comms. Jax gritted his teeth, his fingers tightening around the controls. He didn't have time to retreat. The artifact's power surged within him, demanding release. And for the first time, he understood what he had to do. He had to become the conduit for its full energy. He had to channel everything the artifact was into one final strike. "General, I'm not falling back," Jax said, his voice steady and filled with resolve. "I'm going to finish this." Without waiting for a response, he aimed his fighter straight toward the heart of the Federation fleet. The artifact's energy was building now, swirling around him, filling every inch of his ship with raw, untapped power. The fighter itself seemed to hum with a life of its own, vibrating with the force of the relic's energy. "Hold on," Jax muttered to himself as he fired the weapon again. But this time, it wasn't just a single pulse. It was a concentrated surge of the artifact's power, focused through the entire ship. The beam of energy shot forward with unimaginable force, its intensity so great that it cut through the darkness of space like a comet streaking across the sky. The first Federation ship caught in its path exploded in a fiery burst of light, the sheer force of the blast obliterating it and sending debris scattering in all directions. Jax's fighter flew through the remnants of the explosion without hesitation, the artifact's energy coursing through every part of him. He was connected to it now, completely one with the power it offered. He locked onto another Federation ship and released the energy again. The beam sliced through the enemy ship Like a blade cutting through soft metal, the ship shattered. As though it were nothing more than a toy in the hands of a child, the power from the artifact seemed limitless now, no longer constrained by the need for precision or control. "Vega, you're going too far." General Trent's voice was frantic as she spoke through the comms, but Jax was beyond words now. His ship hurtled through the battlefield, firing blast after blast of pure energy from the artifact's weapon system. Ships exploded all around him, the Federation's forces disintegrating in the face of this new weapon. The tides of battle were shifting. Earth's forces now had the upper hand, but Jax knew that he couldn't stop now. He pushed the artifact's power to the absolute limit, focusing all of it into a single moment of destruction. He aimed his fighter at the heart of the enemy fleet, where the Federation's command ship loomed like a massive fortress. It was the largest ship in the fleet, and it was guarded by dozens of smaller vessels. But Jax wasn't afraid, not now, not with the artifact's power at his fingertips. He fired once more, and the beam of energy shot forward with a deafening roar. The explosion that followed was unlike anything he had ever witnessed. The Federation's command ship disintegrated in an instant, the shockwave of the blast sending ripples through space and knocking smaller ships off course. Jax didn't wait to see the aftermath. He had no time to celebrate, no time to check the results. All he knew was that Earth was finally fighting back, and the Federation had underestimated them in their arrogance. As the chaos of the battle raged on, Jax's mind remained locked on one goal. Earth had a chance to survive, and he had become the conduit of their salvation. But even as the Federation fleet fell apart around him, he knew the fight wasn't over yet. The Federation would regroup and come back stronger, and when they did, Jax would be ready. The battlefield was chaotic as Jax flew through the remains of the Federation fleet, his heart pounding in his chest, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The Federation's ships were disintegrating in waves, but Jax knew better than to think this victory would last long. The enemy was resourceful, and they would come back with a vengeance. The Federation didn't give up easily. Jax's comms crackled again. This time, it was General Trent's voice, sharp and commanding. "Vega, what's your status? We need you back here now. The battle's not over." "I'm on my way back," Jax responded, his voice steady, though he could feel the strain in his body. The artifact's power had drained him more than he realized, but he couldn't afford to show weakness, not now. He needed to be ready for whatever came next. He turned his fighter around to regroup with the rest of Earth's forces. The remnants of the Federation fleet were scattered in disarray, their command structure shattered, but there were still pockets of resistance, and they were regrouping quickly. Jax knew that the war wasn't over, and the Federation would soon send reinforcements to try to reclaim control of the system. His fighter raced through space toward the rendezvous point with Earth's remaining ships. The artifact's energy still hummed within him, but it felt different now, more subdued, as though it had expended much of its power in the destruction he had unleashed. But he wasn't ready to give up just yet. He could feel the pulse of the artifact like a heartbeat within him, urging him to continue. As he neared the rendezvous point, Jax's eyes scanned the vast expanse of space, looking for signs of enemy movement. He couldn't afford to be blindsided again. The Federation would undoubtedly be regrouping somewhere, and he needed to be prepared. "Vega, we've got a problem." General Trent's voice cut through his thoughts. "The Federation has called in reinforcements. A massive fleet is on its way. They'll be here within the hour." Jax's stomach dropped. He had known it was too easy, but hearing it confirmed made the situation feel even more real. The Federation wasn't done with Earth, yet they had just been temporarily stunned, but now they were coming back with a larger and more powerful force. "We need to prepare for another fight." Jax set his mind racing as he quickly calculated their chances. The Earth fleet was already battered and damaged from the previous engagement. They couldn't withstand another full-scale attack, not with the Federation's reinforcements on the way. "We're already prepping the defenses," Trent said, "but we need you and the artifact's power to give us an edge. We can't afford to lose any more ships." Jax didn't respond immediately. He was already pulling up tactical data on his fighter's display, searching for the best strategy to leverage the artifact's power one last time. The energy within him was still there, faint but present, like a distant storm waiting to erupt. But could he really summon it again without causing irreparable damage to himself? Jack's Trent's voice was insistent this time. "I know you're tired, but we don't have any other options." He closed his eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath and clearing his mind. The power of the artifact was immense, but he knew it came with a cost. It had already drained him once in the last battle, and he could feel his strength waning. But there was no other choice, not when the fate of humanity hung in the balance. "I'll do it," Jax finally said, his voice grim but resolute. "But we have to hit them hard before they can organize. If we wait too long, we'll be overrun." General Trent didn't waste any time. "Prepare for another assault. Vega will back you up, but you'll have to lead this one." Jax didn't hesitate. He turned his fighter and accelerated back toward the outer edges of Earth's space. The artifact's power was growing stronger again within him. It was time to tap into it one last time. He would have to push himself and the ship to the limits to stop the Federation reinforcements from reaching Earth. As he approached the approaching Federation fleet, Jax could feel his body pulse with the artifact's energy. Once more his heart raced as he prepared for the battle ahead. The Federation was coming, but this time Earth would stand its ground. And this time they had the power to fight back. Jax's mind was a whirlwind of strategy and focus as he approached the incoming Federation reinforcements. His fingers hovered over the controls, the artifact's power thrumming through his body like an electric current, urging him forward. There was no time to waste. He could feel the enemy fleet closing in, their ships massive and cold, like predators, circling their prey. Earth's remaining fleet was still reeling from the previous battle. But Jax had no choice. He had to lead the charge if humanity was to survive. The comms crackled again. This time, it was General Trent, her voice tight with urgency. "Vega, their fleet is far larger than we anticipated. They're forming up at the outer rim of the system. We won't have much time before they launch their first wave." "I know," Jax replied, his voice steady, but there was a fire building inside him. "We need to hit them before they regroup. We can't let them get any closer." He locked onto the enemy fleet on his ship's display. The sheer number of ships on the screen was overwhelming. Hundreds of Federation warships and support vessels clustered together in perfect formation, ready to strike Earth from all angles. The Federation had learned from their last defeat, and now they were coming in force. "Vega, what's the plan?" Trent's voice cut through his thoughts. Jax didn't hesitate. "We strike fast and hard. I'll take the front lines. The rest of the fleet will follow my lead. I'll use the artifact's power to break their formation. Then we push through and hit their command ship." There was a brief silence before Trent's voice came through again. "Understood. Be careful, Jax." Jax didn't answer. He was already locking his fighter onto the closest Federation warship. His heart was pounding in his chest, but he could feel the artifact's energy building within him, its power like a storm ready to unleash. He pulled the throttle back hard, sending his fighter rocketing toward the enemy ships. The artifact's energy surged through him, the power amplifying every move he made. His ship felt alive beneath him, as though it too was part of the weapon he was about to unleash. The Federation fleet didn't expect the attack. They were too focused on Earth's weakened forces to notice Jax's fighter breaking through their ranks. The first blast of energy hit with devastating force, obliterating a smaller Federation vessel. In an instant, the shockwave from the blast sent nearby ships scattering in every direction. "Target locked," Jax muttered, as his ship's targeting system locked onto another Federation warship. He fired again, and the energy beam tore through the ship's hull like a hot knife through butter. The explosion was massive, sending debris and shockwaves in every direction. Jax's fighter was moving faster now. He was a blur in the sky, darting between enemy ships, taking them down. One by one, the artifact's power was flowing through him more freely. Now he could feel it pushing him further, his body tingling with the intensity of it. The hum of the relic was like a song in his mind, a rhythm he could feel deep within his bones. The Federation was beginning to react now, but it was too late. Jax had already shattered their formation, and Earth's fleet was moving in behind him, their weapons opening fire on the scattered enemy ships as they attempted to regroup. "Keep pushing forward." Jax's voice rang out over the comms. "We have them on the run now. Finish them off." His fighter shot forward again, another Federation warship in his sights, the targeting system locked on. and Jax released the artifact's energy, once more the beam of raw power tearing through the ship and turning it into a cloud of burning wreckage. The Federation fleet was crumbling. The reinforcements they had sent were no match for the speed and power of Jax's strike. The Earth fleet followed his lead, pressing forward with everything they had as Jax cut through the enemy lines like a blade through the dark. But there was no time to rest. Jax knew the true danger was still ahead. The Federation would not give up this easily, and their true strength hadn't yet been revealed. "We've got them on the ropes, but we need to stay focused." General Trent's voice came through his comms again, her tone grim. "Jax, there's still one final wave coming from the outer rim. Be ready." Jax clenched his teeth as he readied himself for the next phase of the battle. The final wave of the Federation's reinforcements was on its way, and Earth's last hope still rested on his shoulders as he pushed forward into the unknown. Jax's heart pounded as the final wave of Federation ships emerged from the outer rim, their massive warships cutting through the darkness like shadows, descending upon Earth's battered fleet. The intensity of the battle had reached a fever pitch, and Jax knew that this was the moment that would decide humanity's fate. The artifact's power surged within him like a torrent, but even with all its energy flowing through his veins, he couldn't afford to falter now. The comms crackled once more. General Trent's voice filled his ears. "Vega, we've got one shot at this. We need to disrupt their command ship. If we don't take it down now, the entire fleet will regroup and we'll be finished." Jax's eyes narrowed as he scanned the battlefield. The Federation fleet was huge, but their command ship was the key. It was the nerve center of the entire operation, and if it fell, the rest of their forces would collapse without leadership. "Understood," Jax said, his voice steady, but filled with urgency. "I'll go straight for it." He pulled his fighter into a sharp turn, heading toward the heart of the Federation fleet, where their command ship sat nestled in the center, protected by layers of smaller ships and defensive systems. The target was clear, but it wouldn't be easy getting to it. As Jax cut through space, his fighter rocketed toward the enemy lines. The Federation ships were already preparing their weapons to intercept him, but he wasn't worried. The artifact's energy was flowing through him like a tidal wave, and every instinct within him screamed to push harder, to unleash more power. The first volley of enemy fire came at him in a series of bright flashes, but Jax was already weaving his fighter through the incoming blasts like a dance. He could feel the ship responding to every command. His hands gave the artifact, amplifying his reflexes, making him faster, sharper than he had ever been before. He locked onto the command ship, now the massive structure looming before him, surrounded by a web of enemy firepower. His targeting system beeped as it locked onto the ship's weak points, and Jax's finger hovered over the firing button. "Vega, what are you doing?" General Trent's voice crackled through his comms, again urgency evident in her tone. "You can't go in alone." "I don't have a choice," Jax muttered to himself as his grip tightened on the controls. He could feel the artifact's energy intensifying within him, like a storm growing stronger and stronger. He fired the weapon once more, but this time the energy beam was different. It wasn't just a concentrated pulse, it was a focused explosion of the artifact's power, released in one catastrophic blast. The beam tore through space faster than light itself, cutting through enemy ships and defenses in its wake. The first line of Federation ships shattered under the intensity of the blast, their hulls crumpling and disintegrating like paper in a fire. But Jax wasn't done. He pushed his fighter harder, driving it straight toward the command ship. The artifact's power was overwhelming, now filling him with a sense of invincibility, but also a strange weight, as though he were walking a thin line between life and death. The artifact was asking everything of him, and he was willing to give it. The command ship loomed closer now. Jax was within range. He fired again, and the beam of energy tore through the heart of the Federation's flagship. The explosion that followed was unlike anything he had ever seen, the ship disintegrating into a massive cloud of fire and debris. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze in space, the shockwave from the explosion rippling through the battlefield like a wave crashing against the shore. Then the Federation fleet faltered. Their ships broke formation and began to retreat. The command structure that had once held them together was gone, and without it the remaining warships were little more than scattered fragments. Jax's fighter coasted through the smoke and debris As the remnants of the Federation fleet retreated into the blackness of space, their reinforcements broken and scattered. General Trent's voice came through the comms once more, though this time there was a note of relief in her tone. "Vega, you did it. The command ship's gone. They're retreating." Jax's breath came in heavy gasps as he steered his fighter back toward Earth's fleet, the energy of the artifact still pulsing through him. But now in a more controlled rhythm. He had done it. They had done it. Earth had won the battle. But even as the Federation fleet retreated, Jax knew that the war wasn't over. This was just one victory in a larger struggle, and there would be more battles to fight, more enemies to face. For now, Earth had survived, but Jax's mind was already turning toward the future, wondering what would come next and how long it would take before the Federation regrouped and came back for another fight. But whatever happened, he knew one thing for sure: humanity was no longer the underdog, and the artifact had changed everything forever.